My wife kissed her ex on our engagement and said there was nothing wrong with that. Hello everyone. I never imagined I'd be sharing my personal turmoil here, but recent events have left me reeling, and I could use some outside perspective. My name is Orson, I'm 28, and up until a few days ago, I was engaged to a woman I believed was my soulmate. Our relationship seemed like a fairy tale until it wasn't. I've always been cautious in relationships. My friends often tease me, calling me Steady Orson because I never rush into anything without thorough consideration. I watch for red flags, analyze situations, and ensure I'm making the right choices. This meticulous approach has been my modus operandi for as long as I can remember. But all that caution seemed to evaporate when I met Maribel 2 years ago. We connected on a dating app, and to be honest, I was surprised someone like her would be interested in me. Maribel was captivating, her radiant smile, sharp intellect, and that infectious laugh that could light up any room. Our first date stretched for hours, filled with deep conversations and shared laughter. I was smitten from the start. Our relationship progressed swiftly, a departure from my usual pace. Within 8 months, we moved in together. For someone like me, who typically takes things slow, this was unprecedented. But with Maribel, everything felt right. After nearly 2 years together, I proposed during a hike to her favorite scenic overlook. She said yes, tears streaming down her face, and fellow hikers captured the moment for us. I was on cloud 9, convinced we were destined for a lifetime of happiness. However, complexities began to surface, primarily stemming from Maribel's family background. Her family was well off, not extravagantly wealthy, but comfortable enough to enjoy country club memberships and annual European vacations. Her father, Percival, owned a successful financial advisory firm managing retirement funds across the state. He was a man of stature and never missed an opportunity to remind me of my comparatively modest standing. I run a solar panel installation business, a venture I started 3 years ago after gaining experience in the field. With 4 employees and a steady stream of clients, I'm proud of what I've built. Yet, Percival always seemed to belittle my accomplishments. Every encounter included a condescending remark about my profession, thinly veiled as humor. Maribel would often brush off his comments, assuring me that she didn't share his views on status and success. I believed her. Our engagement party was held last month at their country club, a gathering of about 70 guests, complete with an open bar and a jazz band. The evening was unfolding beautifully until I noticed an unexpected guest, Gideon, Maribel's college ex-boyfriend. They had dated for 4 years before we met. Tall, impeccably dressed, and working at a prestigious investment firm, Gideon exuded the kind of charm that made me uneasy. I approached Maribel, who was chatting with some cousins, and asked, "Why is Gideon here?" She gave me a look of mild exasperation. "His parents are friends with my parents. It would have been awkward not to invite him." "You didn't think to mention this to me beforehand?" I pressed. "Honestly, I didn't think it mattered. We broke up years ago, it's not a big deal," she replied, her gaze drifting toward Gideon across the room. Throughout the evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that Maribel was overly aware of Gideon's presence. Every time I glanced her way, she seemed to be subtly checking his whereabouts. I tried to dismiss my growing unease as paranoia, focusing instead on mingling with guests and expressing gratitude for their attendance. I even endured Percival's thinly veiled jabs about my profession with a forced smile. About an hour into the party, I realized I hadn't seen Maribel for a while. Initially, I assumed she was attending to guests or freshening up. But as 20 minutes passed without any sign of her, I grew concerned. I searched the main hall, the patio, even asked her friends if they'd seen her, nothing. A hallway leading to smaller rooms in the coat check area caught my attention. Perhaps she had stepped away for a moment of respite. As I turned the corner, my world came crashing down. There, in a secluded alcove near the coatroom, stood Maribel and Gideon. They were close, too close. His hand rested on her waist, and they were locked in a kiss. Not a fleeting peck between old friends, but a lingering, intimate kiss that spoke volumes. For a moment, I was paralyzed, the scene before me searing into my memory. I felt as though the ground had been yanked from beneath me. Gideon noticed me first, stepping back and adjusting his tie with an infuriating nonchalance. He didn't look embarrassed or surprised, just offered a smug half-smile that made my blood boil. Maribel turned and, upon seeing me, displayed an expression that cut deeper than the betrayal itself. She looked annoyed, not guilty, not remorseful, just irritated that I'd interrupted them. "Orson," she sighed, "don't make this into a big thing." I found my voice, though it trembled with emotion. "What's going on here?" She rolled her eyes, an action so dismissive it felt like a slap. "It was just a quick goodbye kiss. We have history, that's all." "You're overreacting." "You're kissing your ex at our engagement party," I stated, needing to hear the words aloud to grasp the reality. It was barely even a kiss, she replied, dabbing at her lipstick as if this were a mundane inconvenience. Gideon and I dated for years, we're still friends. Don't be so insecure. Gideon, hands casually in his pockets, added, yeah, man, we were just reminiscing. No need to make it weird. Something inside me snapped, or perhaps it shut down entirely. A surreal calm washed over me as I nodded, turned on my heel, and walked away. Orson, Maribel called after me, her tone a mix of frustration and warning. Don't you dare make a scene right now. I didn't stop. I didn't acknowledge anyone as I made my way through the party, grabbed my jacket from the coat check, and headed straight to my car. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Maribel. Where did you go? Answer your phone. You're being completely immature. My dad is asking where you went. OMG, you're embarrassing me so much. I turned off my phone and drove aimlessly, the city lights blurring as tears threatened to spill. Eventually, I found myself at my friend Nolan's apartment. He opened the door, took one look at me, and knew something was terribly wrong. Come in, he said softly. We sat on his balcony, the cool night air a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. I recounted everything, the party, Gideon, Maribel's dismissive reaction. Nolan listened intently, offering no interruptions, just a steady presence as I unraveled. When I finished, he asked, what are you going to do? I stared into the distance, the weight of the evening pressing down on me. I have no idea. But I can't marry her. Not after this. Nolan nodded, understanding etched in his features. You can. You can stay here as long as you need, Nolan said, motioning to his gaming couch. It wasn't the most comfortable place to sleep, too short for my frame, and the springs complained every time I shifted, but it felt like a safe place, and right now, that was enough. The next morning, sunlight streamed in through the blinds, highlighting the cluttered coffee table and scattered energy drink cans. I blinked into the light and reached for my phone. I turned it on out of habit, not sure if I was ready for what I'd see. The notifications came in immediately, dozens of missed calls and messages from Maribel, along with a few from her father, Percival. Reading through them was like watching a weather forecast spiral from calm to storm to pure chaos. At first, it was confusion. Maribel, where are you? Please talk to me. Maribel, I think you're blowing this way out of proportion. Then came the anger. Maribel, so you're just going to disappear? That's so childish. Maribel, my dad is furious. Everyone was asking about you. And finally, desperation. Maribel, please, Orson. Don't throw everything away over one moment. Maribel, I didn't mean to hurt you. It wasn't what it looked like. I didn't reply to any of it. I just turned the phone off again. Later that morning, I sat in Nolan's living room alone, nursing a mug of stale coffee and staring at nothing in particular. With the shock wearing off, clarity began to settle in. Not just about the party, but about everything. In the 2 years Maribel and I were together, there had always been signs. Not necessarily red flags, but subtle remarks that, in hindsight, painted a bigger picture. She had this way of talking about my business that always sounded vaguely supportive until you listen closely. Once you get some bigger clients, things will really take off. When you can afford to hire more people, I bet it'll feel more real. At social events, she introduced me as Orson, he owns his own company, but never elaborated, as if she were afraid people would ask what I did. When I tried to explain solar installation, she'd either change the subject or steer the conversation to something more glamorous. I used to chalk that up to nerves or her trying to keep things light. Now, I wasn't so sure. There was also the way she'd always side with her father when he made sly remarks. Like the time he asked, so, how many rooftops did you climb this week? Laughing like it was a harmless joke. Maribel didn't defend me. She just smiled and said, that's just how Dad is. But why had I accepted that? By mid-afternoon, I made a decision. I had to get my things from our shared apartment and I wanted to do it before she got home from work. I texted one of my employees, Clarence, to ask if he could help me move a few essentials. Clarence showed up with his old pickup truck within the hour. You okay? He asked, leaning against the truck bed. Not really, I admitted. But I'll feel better once I'm out of there. It took us about 2 hours to gather everything I couldn't do without it: clothes, tools, important documents, and a few keepsakes. The rest could wait. I didn't want to linger. The apartment, once full of warmth, now felt sterile and foreign. Before I left, I placed my grandmother's ring, the one I'd used to propose, on the kitchen counter. I left a single note beside it that read, "Goodbye, Maribel. That was your kiss goodbye." Then I walked out, locked the door behind me, and didn't look back. I blocked Maribel's number. I also blocked her on every social platform. I knew that if I gave her even the slightest opening, she'd try to manipulate the narrative, minimize what happened, or make me question myself. That evening, Clarence and I grabbed burgers. I needed something simple, something grounding. As we ate, he didn't pry. He just sat across from me and made idle conversation about weekend football and our next few installations. Afterwards, when I returned to Nolan's apartment, I found a note taped to the door. It was a letter from Maribel. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, precise and flowing. Inside was a 2-page confession. She wrote that the kiss with Gideon was meaningless, that emotions got the best of her, that it was a one-time thing. She claimed they were just reminiscing and that she got swept up in nostalgia. I wasn't thinking. I didn't plan it. I didn't mean for it to happen. She begged me to call her, to talk, to try and work things out. She even mentioned couples therapy. I tore the letter in half, dropped it in the trash, and went to bed. The next morning, I made a list of every wedding vendor we'd booked and started calling. Though her parents were footing most of the bill, I had paid for a few key deposits, catering, photography, the venue's down payment. I called each vendor and explained that we were canceling. Some were understanding. A few offered partial refunds. Others said they'd need confirmation from both parties. I told them that wouldn't be possible. I was finishing up the last call when my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. For a moment, I debated letting it go to voicemail. But something told me to answer. Hello? Orson, wait, don't hang up, a voice said. It was Gideon. There's nothing to talk about, I said. I just want to explain. That kiss wasn't planned. Maribel and we were just catching up. Talking about college and it happened. It didn't mean anything. Do you normally kiss your exes when you're reminiscing? I asked, keeping my tone flat. Or just the ones who are engaged? He sighed. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. She's a mess right now. She really does love you. Then why did she kiss you back? Silence on the other end. I just don't want to be the reason someone else's relationship falls apart, he finally said. You're not the reason, I replied. She made a choice. And so did I. I hung up. Then I blocked his number, too. Later that day, my phone rang again. This time it was Percival. He had tried calling a few times already, but I hadn't picked up until now. What? I said, tired. We need to discuss this situation, you and my daughter. There's nothing to discuss. We're not getting married. Don't be rash, he replied, his tone clipped. Everyone makes mistakes. Maribel feels terrible. Is she sorry it happened, or sorry I caught her? There was a pause. Look, Orson, I understand you're upset. But perhaps there's a more strategic way to handle this. Quietly. What are you talking about? Well, I know your business is still young. And I know how challenging growth can be. Perhaps I could assist, a small investment or loan, something to help you expand. In exchange, you and Maribel postpone the wedding. Take time. Work through this. I nearly dropped the phone. You're trying to bribe me, I said slowly, to stay with your daughter. I wouldn't call it that, he replied smoothly. I'm trying to offer support. A path forward. For all of us. No thanks, I said, and hung up. After that call with Percival, I didn't know what unsettled me more, the betrayal from Maribel or the ease with which her father tried to spin my heartbreak into a business transaction. It was as if my pain was a minor inconvenience to be managed, a line item on a spreadsheet. And yet, a part of me wondered, why does he care this much? He'd never truly approved of me. He barely disguised his contempt for my career or my background. Why go to such lengths now? That question lingered in the back of my mind like a low, persistent hum. For the next 2 days, I stayed quiet. I went to work with Clarence and the others, kept busy with installations and client consultations. During the drive between job sites, my phone stayed silent, not because it wasn't ringing, but because I kept it on airplane mode unless I needed GPS. I thought the storm might pass, but then something strange happened. Maribel showed up at our work site. It was Monday morning, and we were installing panels on a beautiful 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. The sky was clear, and I was up on the roof when Clarence called up to me. Orson. You've got a visitor. Fancy car, high heels. I think it's her. I climbed down the ladder slowly, my heart pounding against my chest. There she was, Maribel, standing next to her silver coupe, dressed in a soft blue blouse and white skirt that looked more suited for brunch than a job site. "I've been trying to reach you," she said, her voice low but urgent. "I've been working," I replied simply, gesturing to the roof, the equipment, the workers. She looked around, noticing the homeowner nearby, who was pretending not to listen but was clearly invested in the scene unfolding on her lawn. "You moved out without even talking to me. You just left. You kissed your ex-boyfriend at our engagement party," I said, my voice calm and even. "What did you expect me to do?" "It was a mistake," she said quickly. "A moment. Gideon and I were just reminiscing." He leaned in, and I. "You kissed him back, Maribel." She looked away, frustrated. "You're going to throw everything away over a moment? If it was just a moment, why did you do it at all?" Her lips tightened. "You're being unfair." I shook my head. "You didn't even look sorry when I caught you. You looked annoyed. Because I knew you'd make it into something bigger than it was. And now you realize it was something bigger," I said quietly. There was silence between us for a long moment. Then she muttered, almost bitterly, "You know what? Maybe this is for the best." I was settling anyway. That caught me off guard. "Settling?" I repeated, unsure whether to laugh or be hurt. She crossed her arms, her tone sharper now. "You climb roofs for a living. You drive a truck that barely starts. You live paycheck to paycheck. That's not the life I wanted." I smiled, not out of happiness, but out of the finality of it. "You're right," I said. "That's not the life you wanted. And I'm glad I know that now." Her expression faltered, as if she hadn't expected me to agree. "You deserve exactly what you're getting," I added. "And I deserve someone who values me, not someone who sees me as a temporary solution." The homeowner, who had been standing by her rose bushes, audibly muttered, "Well said." Maribel's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this." I paused. "No. What I regret is trusting someone who couldn't even make it through the engagement without breaking that trust." I turned around and walked back to the house. The moment the ladder was beneath me, I heard her car engine rev and tires crunching against the gravel as she sped away. I wanted to think that was the end of it. But the next day, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Orson. My name is Tilda. I know we've never met, but I think we should talk. I'm Gideon's girlfriend." Or. I was. It took me a moment to process the message. Gideon had a girlfriend? I replied cautiously, and we agreed to meet for coffee the next morning. Tilda was nothing like I expected. Down to earth, no nonsense, with a short pixie haircut and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen enough. She worked as a graphic designer and lived in the city with Gideon, or at least, she had until last week. "He's been cheating," she said simply as she sat down across from me. "I guess we both got played," I said. She nodded and pulled out her phone. I found the messages between them. I wasn't snooping. I just opened his iPad to play a podcast, and it was all there. She handed me her screen. I scrolled in silence, conversations between Maribel and Gideon going back months. Not just emotional messages but plans to meet, hotel bookings, jokes about my business, and one message that made my chest tighten. "Once Orson's company gets more visibility, I'll have the network I need. We just need to play this smart." "She was using me," I murmured. Tilda nodded. "They were both using us. There were receipts to hotel confirmations, dinner bills, messages about keeping things quiet until the timing is right. They met the night before your engagement party," Tilda said. "He told me he had a client meeting. He was actually at the Westline Hotel downtown with her." It all made sense now. Every girl's night, every last-minute reschedule. The glances at her phone. The defensiveness. And the way she'd talk about our future like it was some project she was managing, not a life we were building together. I thanked Tilda for being brave enough to reach out. "None of this is your fault," I told her. She gave a small smile. "Same to you." But there was more to come. Later that evening, I got a call from Janie, a mutual friend of ours. We weren't especially close, but we'd had good conversations at group events and double dates. "I thought you should know," she said. "Maribel's telling people you were controlling and insecure. That she's glad you left. She's planning some big party this weekend. A freedom party." I was stunned. She said what? Janie sighed. "It's a lot of nonsense, but I felt like you should hear it from someone who doesn't believe it." I thanked her and ended the call. A few minutes later, I received an email from her and EV to the event, finally free, celebrating a fresh start with a photo of Maribel at the beach and the subtitle Living My Truth. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But I did forward the invite to one person. Percival. No message. No explanation. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was him. What is this? Just thought you'd like to see how your daughter is choosing to celebrate. Where did you get this? Does it matter? She's throwing a public celebration of the end of our engagement with the same man she kissed at your party. There was a long silence on the other end. This is unacceptable, he muttered. After everything I've done? He hung up before I could ask what he meant. That last call with Percival stuck in my head. After everything I've done? I couldn't shake it. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone. Not regret. Not embarrassment. More like desperation. It got me wondering, why was he trying so hard to preserve an engagement he clearly didn't support? Why throw money at me, make bribes, then flip into veil threats? There was something I wasn't seeing. And I don't like not seeing the whole picture. So, I made a call. My old friend Wes is a journalist for a regional business publication. He covers everything from real estate to finance scandals, and he's got a nose for stories before they break. I texted him, "Hey, ever heard anything shady about Bennett and Foster Advisors?" A few minutes later, my phone rang. "You didn't hear?" he asked, almost whispering. "Hear what?" "They're under investigation. State Compliance Board. Mismanagement of accounts. Improper reporting. It's all still hush-hush, but a few major clients have already pulled out. Something about unauthorized reallocations of retirement funds." My stomach sank. It clicked in an instant. The engagement party. The sudden push to reconcile. The bribe. The threats. Percival didn't care about me or even about his daughter's happiness, he cared about optics. A big, elegant wedding was supposed to be the image of stability. It would show his clients and regulators that nothing was wrong at home. A public signal of success and unity. And I had just ruined that image. I hung up with Wes, my head buzzing. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have, but curiosity won. I texted Percival. "I know about the investigation. That's why you wanted the wedding to go through, isn't it?" No reply. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole. There he was. Percival himself, standing in his usual tailored coat, holding his phone in one hand like a lawyer about to make closing arguments. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "May I speak with you?" he asked politely. "Sure," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "But if this is another offer or threat, don't waste your time." He stepped in anyway. My apartment was still sparse: a mattress, a desk, a folding chair. Nothing like what he was used to. He gave the room a quick once-over, then sat down gingerly at the edge of the folding chair. "I think we got off on the wrong foot," he started, folding his hands like he was at a board meeting. "I don't think that's true," I said. "I think I finally saw your real foot." He let out a short, almost amused breath. "Look, I admit I mishandled the situation. But what's done is done. Maribel made a mistake. You left. Fine. But what I care about now is damage control." "Why?" I asked. "Because your firm's under investigation?" His face hardened. "Just slightly. I don't know who's talking, but that situation is internal and will be resolved. In the meantime, the public perception of my family and business must remain intact. And that's why you offered to help my business. To buy my silence. To offer support in exchange for discretion and maturity." "Yes," he said, as if the word bribe were beneath him. "Don't dress it up," I replied. "You were trying to make the fallout from your daughter's actions my responsibility." "I was trying to protect my daughter." "No, you were trying to protect yourself. She was a means to an end, just like you saw me as a tool to polish your public image." He stood. "This conversation was a mistake." "Probably," I said. "But now we both know where we stand." He walked out without another word. I locked the door behind him, then sat on the floor because I still didn't own a proper chair, and exhaled deeply. The final piece had been placed. It all made sense. The next few days were quiet. My phone stayed blessedly still, and I got back to work. I followed up with clients, paid my suppliers, and to my surprise, received a call from my main solar panel distributor. I braced myself. I figured Percival might have made good on his threat. But instead? We were reviewing accounts, the rep said, and based on your reliability and recent project expansion, we're increasing your credit limit. I paused. Wait, you are? Of course. You've been one of our most consistent small-scale clients. And we heard you're growing. Turns out, Percival hadn't pulled any strings after all, or maybe he tried and no one listened. Either way, I was in the clear. A couple of nights later, I got one final message from Maribel. I know I messed everything up. I shouldn't have let things go the way they did. Draven isn't who I thought he was. Please call me. I didn't reply. Then came the cherry on top, a call from Tilda. Did you hear about the party? She asked, barely containing her laughter. You mean Maribel's freedom celebration? Yeah, that one. Apparently, Percival showed up midway through and lost it. Called Draven a grifter. Told Maribel she was an embarrassment. Cut her off financially in front of everyone. I blinked. Seriously? Dead serious. He cancelled her credit cards and gave her 2 weeks to move out of her condo. Draven just stood there like a deer in headlights. It was a disaster. I didn't know whether to laugh or feel sorry for them. I landed somewhere in between. Thanks for telling me, I said. Oh, there's more. Draven reached out to me again. Said he wanted to reconnect and that Maribel was too unstable. Like that's going to work. You dodged one too, I told her. I think we both did. After that, the noise faded. There were no more texts, no more calls, no more backdoor offers or surprise visitors. The storm had finally passed. In the weeks that followed, I found a new apartment, not large, not fancy, but mine. I got a second desk, a better chair, even bought some actual kitchenware. My company landed a new contract with a small development project out of state, and Clarence was promoted to lead technician. I picked up a dog from a local shelter, a scruffy terrier mix named Rolo who follows me everywhere. And I reconnected with an old friend from college, Kendra, who'd been cheering me on quietly through all of it. We grabbed coffee one weekend and ended up talking for hours. Nothing serious yet, but it feels real. And honest. I used to think betrayal was the worst thing that could happen in a relationship. But now I know, the worst thing is betraying yourself by staying in something that's already broken. And sometimes, the worst moments in life are the ones that finally give you permission to grow. Maribel and Percival? They were just part of the lesson. My business is still standing. My values are intact. And I'm finally building a life on my own terms, not one that had to impress a country club audience or fit into someone else's story. If you're reading this and stuck in something that doesn't feel right, listen to your instincts. Ask the hard questions. And don't let someone else's idea of success drown out your own. Sometimes, the greatest gift is the one you never wanted. Mine was the goodbye kiss. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.